Hey guys, Balkan Architect here, and in this week's Advanced Balkan Architect course, the topic is going to be details in Revit. So in this course, I'm going to be covering everything you need to know about details in Revit and everything that Revit has on offer as far as details are concerned. So I'm going to be starting off by explaining drafting views where you can create your own details that are completely disconnected from the model. These are details that you will be able to reuse in projects, in future projects, and you can use old AutoCAD details even too. So here, as you can see, I've shown in this case first how to load in an AutoCAD detail and then how to explode it and then modify it if necessary. And I showed this on this concrete building detail, as you can see. Next, I show how to create out of scratch this complete detail. Now, as you can see, I've started off with an image. This is just an image that I got online. Now, if I hide that image, I show you how to trace over, but not only just trace over, but actually we're going to be using complete drafting components and detail components, as you can see over here. So this is all out of parts, and of course some things are just simple lines, so I show you how to assemble this whole thing. So and here, as you can see, we've got installation, so I show you how to use all of the parametric tools that are associated with detail drafting in Revit. Then we move on to a section callout. So I take this section from my advanced course where I show you how to model this house, and then I show you how to do the detail of this here wall. As you can see, it's pretty rough, no detail in this case, but then I show you how to do it, and as you can see here we have a detail. So if I open that up, this is what it looks like in the end. So we've added a lot more details here. We've added a beam, some structure here, we've added another structural element, we've actually added CMU blocks over here, and a lot more details here. As you can see, all of the wood flooring is separate elements and stuff like that. So I show you everything you need to know about creating details such as this. Okay, without further ado, let's get into the course. Let's get started by explaining the two main approaches to details in Revit, or to detailing in Revit. So to explain this, I'm going to be using the Revit sample file that comes with any version of Revit that you install. If you don't have this file, I will include it with the exercise files so you can use it if you want to. So anyways, here we have a project file, and of course we have a section there, and as you can see here on the section, if you maybe want to get more information about this section, maybe about some of the details here, you can create a separate section that is a detail view. So that has been created over here. Now this is in form of a callout, or this is a wall section or a callout section. So if you go here to views, as you can see here, you have your callout command. Now I'm going to be talking about using this a bit later on, but basically it's just kind of grabbing a detail out of a part of your model. And if I just double click here on that callout, as you can see, this is what that looks like. So basically we have a section of the house that's kind of magnified for a callout, and here you can see all of the parts that we have. Now on this callout we have some more callouts, and if we double click maybe this one, as you can see, this is what we get in the end. Now if I hover over any of these elements, as you can see, it will highlight. So this is a curtain system, so this is that curtain wall. If I hit escape, I can select this is a floor. So basically we have some model elements here, and we can use those and just add more detail. Now you would add more detail by going here on the annotate tab, and then you would use some of the detailing tools, or just tools in general, to basically add more detail to this callout. Now this is the first approach. So basically you are taking a part of a section or a floor plan or an elevation or whatever, and then you're using that to create a maybe more detailed view. As you can see here, the scaling is at 1:10, so this is again a large scale detail, and basically you can add more detail and add all of the elements here, but we're still using these model elements from our architectural project for a reference. Now that is one approach where you're using your architectural elements. Now the second approach is basically completely disconnected from your model, and that's to create a drafting view. Now the reason for this drafting view is because usually, especially in firms that specialize in some sort of a topic, maybe concrete buildings that are maybe residential concrete buildings or something like that, or maybe just smaller wooden residential houses, whatever. Usually these firms have some standardized details, and they are generally reusing them, and they're basically copying details from one project to the other. Now Revit allows for that option, and if I go here to view, and as you can see here, we have this drafting view option, and if I start that, we can name it, so we can call it, I don't know, new drafting view. Let's call it like that. Okay, my caps lock is on. There we go. So new drafting view. Here you can set up the scale and just click OK, and as you can see, you get a blank piece of paper, or just a blank page. So now of course I like to set my detail here to fine, and then here is where you can add your details. Now details, you can just draw them by using the annotate tools, and then you can go with detail lines, with some regions, some components maybe, or whatever. You can do it like that. Or a second approach would be to insert some element. So you would go here to the insert tab, and then you would link up a CAD file or an image or something like that. Now I'm going to get started with these drafting views by showing you how can you basically add stuff to the project. Now I'm not going to be using this project because this is already a completed project, so I'm just going to basically close this down and then start a new project, and then I'm going to be showing you how to use these drafting views. Okay, I'm not going to save any changes. Let's go here to new, and I'm going to go with the architectural template for this one. Open that up. Here we go. So again, let's go to view, and here we have our drafting view. So let's start that. Yeah, let's leave it to drafting view 1. It doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so now here you should probably start off with something as reference. Now I like two approaches. I like to go to the insert tab and either link up or import a CAD file, or add an image and then trace over the image. So those are the two approaches. Now the image approach would be if you maybe found some detail online, and then you only have it in form of an image, so you could load that in. Also you can find a PDF file and use that would be also good. But also if you have a CAD file, perhaps if you're in a company that's transferring from AutoCAD to Revit, you will probably have a lot of CAD details, and there are actually websites where you can download CAD details or buy CAD details or something like that. So it's a good thing to have this option to load in some CAD details. So I have a CAD detail that I did for a school project, so I'm going to insert that. Now you can either link it or import it. The main difference is if you link that CAD file, if you later on make some changes to that CAD file, the changes will update in Revit, and if you import, that's it. That file is just in Revit right now. Okay, so let's go here to link CAD. I like to keep that option where I can maybe make some changes later on. I'm going to go to my desktop, and here we have a CAD detail. Now I know that units are centimeters, and the colors, usually I go with black and white, but here I'm going to go with preserve just because this has already been set up with proper colors for all of the lines. So I can just go here with preserve, and the auto origin to origin, I'm just going to leave that on and just hit open. And there we go. Here is my CAD detail. Now if I select it, as you can see, it's pinned in place, so you can unpin it and move it around if you want, or you can just pin it back in place. So basically here, if you zoom in, as you can see, it's just a complex detail of a concrete office building, and it's a detail where you have what does the ceiling look like inside of the building, and then here on the outside. It's really interesting, so I just pasted it here just because it would be too much work to try to recreate this, so I can just load this in and then just use that. Now, if we select this detail, as you can see, this being a linked up file, you don't have the option to explode all of the lines. So if you explode the lines, then you can make some changes, and I'm going to show you that later on. But for now, we have just the delete layer option. So what I can do is go here and I open up basically a list of layers. So any CAD file has some layers, and if you are, if you are a diligent CAD user, you will probably have a lot of layers. So here I can basically go in and select a layer, and then I can hit OK, and as you can see, I deleted all of those annotations. Now I don't want that, so I'm just going to go back, but you get the point. That's how you can remove some of the layers. Now I can delete this thing, but first I have to unpin it, then delete. Now if I were to import that same CAD file, let's set it to centimeters, hit open, there we go. I can go here to explode, and then I can fully explode this thing. Okay, it's going to take a few seconds, and there we go. So now as you can see, it basically turned this into just detail lines and just components. So basically you can go in and make some changes. So maybe if you just don't want a single line, maybe this line, we're not sure what it is, it's probably shouldn't be there, I can just go ahead and delete that line. This, as you can see, it's this type of a line, but also here we have a layer, so we can actually go ahead and change the line to which layer it belongs to. I can go with maybe wide lines, and now as you can see, it's a wide line. So by just importing the CAD file, it gives you a lot of versatility as to just you can make additional changes to the detail. Maybe you load in a detail, but the perhaps your beams are a bit larger, so you can go ahead here and just extend that, and this is just a hatch, so you can extend that as well. And as you can see, now we have created a larger beam, but then here we would have to probably change the dimensions here. Maybe it's 52, but as you can see, you can really go ahead and change that CAD file within Revit, so you don't have to go back to CAD. If you just explode the file, you can make all of the changes straight here. It's really good that it explodes the text as well, so you can change that as well. And as you can see, this is just a filled region, and it keeps all of the names. So as you can see, it keeps all of the CAD names for the filled regions for the lines. Now the downside is it does explode the dimension lines, as you can see over here, so that's kind of a downside, but everything else is working, as you can see, perfectly. Okay, so that covers all of the basic options for importing CAD files for your details, so you can play around with that. But let me show you now the second approach that I like to use when I don't have a CAD detail or a PDF detail, because you can pretty much use the same thing. You can select lines, but let's say you just have an image that you found online, you like the way it looks, so you want to use that detail or maybe a slightly modified detail. So for that, let me create a new drafting view. So let's go here to view, let's go to drafting view, and let's call it drafting view 2. There we go. So what I'm going to do now is go to the Insert tab, and let's go to Image. Now here on my desktop, I've downloaded an image. This is actually an image that Autodesk uses for representation. Now the downside is it is in inches, and I prefer using centimeters and the whole metric system. But for this one, I roughly know the dimension. This is roughly a 20 centimeter concrete wall. So what I'm just going to be doing is I'm going to go here to just select it, go here to scale, or use the shortcut RE if you want. And then what you need to do is just select one part of the wall, so just one side, then go to the other side, and as you can see, it's like 500 millimeters currently, but don't worry about that. So just go to the other side and then kind of pull it towards the first point and type in 200. Hit enter, and there we go. Now if I go here with the measure tool, and if I measure this should be around 200 millimeters, and it is. Okay, so now we know that this has a correct scale, but now it's time to kind of basically draw over this. So for some elements, you will be using lines. So for example, for this over here, I will probably go with a line. Same thing with this over here. So I would go probably with the annotation and annotate tab, and then go here to detail line, and maybe go with, I don't know, I would go with some sort of a medium line. Let's see. Okay, medium lines, and then I would use that here. Now, you may notice that here we have a lot more lines that you probably have. Now, you probably don't have, well, you certainly don't have all of these lines. That's just because we've imported this CAD file, so that's why we have all of these layers. All of those lines have kind of copied over to Revit detail lines. So anyways, go here to detail line, and then you can basically draft over this view. So you just go like this, and you're basically placing lines over that. Now, this can work for some elements. So for example, for now, this is working pretty good. But let's say for other elements, like this here piece of wall, you can do it with lines, but then you have to have some sort of a hatch inside of that. So for a representation of concrete, or actually in my country, we use a different representation of concrete. We use kind of a crosshatch. Usually I like to make it a gray crosshatch, so for that this wouldn't work. So, or it would really be slow. You would have to do these awkward lines, or maybe trying to make a crosshatch, that would be terrible. So a different approach for something like this is to go with a filled region. So you have a masking region and a filled region, so this is of course a filled region. So I would go with just a rectangle, and then just do a rectangle maybe like this. There we go. And then I would just go ahead here for my filled region. It's vertical, so I would go here into edit type and duplicate that one. Let's call it concrete. I like to call the filled region according to the type of material that it's trying to represent. And then here for the fill pattern, just go with a crosshatch. Let's see, I like to use the smaller one. And then here for the color, I would go with gray, hit OK. There we go. And when I hit finish, there we go. We have that crosshatch and it looks perfect. Now, of course, it's kind of blocking the view, so we can maybe hide it for now, and then we'll turn it on later on once we add this kind of a spike over here. So let me just turn this off just for a second. So I can go here to temporary hide isolate and just hide that element for now. Okay, so for some elements like that, it's really good to go with lines and just filled regions or hatches, but for other elements, it's going to be a bit more difficult. So for example, here we have this kind of a wooden block. It's really representing some sort of a timber, some sort of wood in section. So this is some sort of a beam. Same thing here, same thing here. So for this, you could use lines, but that could maybe be slow. So what you can do alternatively is to load in such a detail element. So just go here to component, and then you can open up the drop menu. Here you can see we have more options. Now this sometimes might be grayed out. You just need to open up the drop menu and select the detail component, and then if you hit escape, it won't be grayed out anymore. So I'm just going to go here to component, and as you can see here we have just a universal beam section. Now this doesn't work. If we open up the drop menu here, you can see we have everything that's loaded in. So you have some sort of a brick, and if I scroll down, we have some universal beam profiles, but that's pretty much the only things we have. But if I go here into load family, here the material here your Revit library can be really useful. Now make sure that you just switch back to your metric units if you're using metric. And here you're going to notice the biggest difference between US Imperial and US Metric. So for example, if I go here to detail items in the US Imperial, and if I go here with wood and plastic, as you can see here we have some wood framing, heavy timber, sheeting, and stuff like that. So this is what we have, and then when you go in, as you can see, we have these elements that we can use within our model. But let me go back a few folders, and then I'm going to go to the US metric, and now let's go to detail items. And as you can see, if we go here to wood and plastic, it's a bit different. So you can go here to maybe rough carpentry, and then wood framing, and then here you can find those details. So it's a bit different to navigate through your US metric or US Imperial, so just keep that in mind, and then here you can find whatever you want. Now here I'm only looking for wood details, but as you can see, if I go back, we have many things to choose from. So let's start off with these wood elements. So what I'm going to do is go here just to rough carpentry, and then wood framing, and then let's see which one is better, maybe rough cut lumber section, and let's open that up. And here, as you can see, we have multiple options. Now none of these really fit what I need them to fit, so I'm going to go with the 25 by 150 millimeters, and then I can adjust it later on. Now, as you can see, you can kind of flip it to the other side, and let's just place it in like this. And then what I'm going to do is, as you can see, these lines are maybe way too dark, or way too thick, so what I'm going to do is just switch the scale to 1 to 5. Now this looks just a little bit better. Okay, so now we do have this detail element inserted, but we need to change the dimensions. So before I change the dimensions, I really need to see what the dimensions are, so I'm just going to measure this, and as you can see, it's like 30 millimeters by 150. So then just select this, go into edit type, let's just rename this one to 30 by 150, and then let's change this to 30, hit apply. Okay, and there we go. So now we can kind of set it here in place. Actually, I'm going to reset temporary height isolate, so I can move this and actually snap it to this point over here. There we go, looks perfect. So I can do the same thing up here. So what I would just do is select this and then copy it upward, okay, here, but this is then smaller. This should be, I think, 90 millimeters. So just go here into edit type, duplicate it, and this one is 30 by 90 millimeters, and then just drop this to 90, hit OK. There we go, and now you can just move it back in place here. There we go. Okay, it's a bit bigger than I thought. Let's just measure this. Yeah, it should be 90. Okay, I think I just need to center it a bit better. Okay, there we go. So basically you would do the same thing for all of these wooden elements, and then you just resize them. It can save you a little bit of time. I know it looks like it's not saving you time just because you have to make those adjustments, but once you start creating multiple details like this and multiple drafting views, just having these elements that you can just reuse all the time is really useful. And especially if you're working for a company that does similar details frequently, you can just reuse these infinitely. Okay, so with that done, let's talk about this spike over here that we have. So this is why I had to put this into kind of temporary height isolate mode, so I can see this here anchor bolt. So what I can do to add that, now I can manually draw that or draft that, but that would be really slow. So I'm just going to go here to component, load family, and then let's go back a few folders, and here we have metals, and let's see, let's do metric metal. Okay, not this. So you kind of have to play around just a little bit. Metal fastenings. Okay, this could be it. So let's see. Do we have anchor? Okay, anchor bolt side, anchor bolt hook side. Okay, this is the one that I want to use. So I'm just going to hit open and use that one, and as you can see, it's way too large. But if I go to the properties panel, open up that drop menu and make it smaller, as you can see, now it's fitting perfectly. So now I can just use that, and here we get these kind of drag points that help us to adjust this to make it look good. Okay, maybe that's too small. Okay, let's zoom in. Okay, there we go, fits perfectly. And then I would maybe move it a little bit, and then here move this up a little bit. Maybe move it that way. There we go, looks perfect. So yeah, looks amazing. So there we go, we have that anchor in place, but as you can see, it's overlapping with this thing, and especially if I go here to reset temporary height isolate. So I want this thing to be over my hatch for concrete, but I want this wood element to be above that. So what I can do is just select this rough cut lumber section and go ahead here and click bring to front. And as you can see, now that is in front of our bolt, and it looks correct. Now let's do the ground. So as you can see here, we have some ground or earth here in section. So for that, what I'm going to be doing is just go here with a detail filled region, and then I can go just with a rectangle kind of like this, and then maybe select these two sides, And yeah, let's drop it down just like this. Maybe move this in a bit. Okay, so now we have that. Let's go here into edit type, duplicate, and let's call this one ground. And here for the color, I might go with some, let's go with something like this, some grayish earth color. And then for the hatch, I'm going to try to find that earth hatch, hit OK, and let's hit finish. Let's see what this looks like. There we go, looks nice. Now, when I look at this thing, you can notice maybe a problem, and the problem is that it ends up just like this. So it's just ends with a simple line, and here these lines aren't even aligned, and it looks really terrible. And if I just select these two elements and then hide those, as you can see, it looks much better when it's just kind of off, disappearing, or maybe even better to have some sort of a line that kind of represents the fact that this is kind of fading off. So let me just reset the temporary hide isolate, and we actually have a component for that. So let me just go here to component and load family. So let's just go back. Let's see, let's go with general, and here we have the break line. So this is a really cool parametric component, detail component. So if I go ahead and hit open, and as you can see, it looks like this. So it's basically a cutoff line. Now I like to align it with the middle of the concrete wall. Now as you can see, it's on the wrong side, so I'm just going to go here to rotate, and let's just rotate it by 180 degrees. Hit enter. There we go. Now I'm just going to drop it down. So you get a bunch of these sliders. The middle one, so here in the middle of this zigzag line, allows you to kind of pull it down a bit. Here we can extend this side, so it's kind of blocking off that. And as you can see, it looks a lot better than what it did. And there you go. Now you can basically use this anywhere else. So perhaps for this here, this is again, I guess, the floor. So I can just go to component and then orbit this. I think it should be this direction. Yeah, there we go. So I can place it here, and then I can go CS for create similar and place one here as well on top, just to block out that part. Now I like to do these in the end, and the reason for that is here now I have to do lines over this, so it would look silly. And also if I were to go with a detail line and kind of go over that, as you can see, it would go over, so then I would have to go back to this break line and go bring to front, and now it's the detail line is behind. Okay, so that's just why I like to do these in the end, so just keep that in mind. Now here, for example, for let's do a few more detail lines. So I'm going to go with maybe wide lines for this, as it's a wall, so maybe just like that, a line here, and then maybe a line here to represent this edge over here, and maybe one more over here. And then for this one we can use lines for that as well. Do we have a line here? Oh yes, we do. There we go. So we do have some lines. And what do you do for this batting line or insulation line? So for that one we can actually use the insulation line that comes here on the detail tools panel. So just go here with insulation, and then here at the insulation width, you actually have to measure this thing. So what I like to do is just go with the measure tool and then go from one line to the other, and it's 90 millimeters. So I like to go a little less than that, just so we can have a bit of a gap on the edge so it doesn't go inside of the line, because when you measure, as you can see, it measures from the middle of the line. But if I start measuring, it's like 2.5 millimeters till we get to the edge of the line. So from the edge of the line to the edge of the line, it's actually more like 85 millimeters. So I'm just going to go here with insulation, go with 85, and the insulation bulge to width ratio, that's basically how wide is the kind of the twist going to be. So if I just go like this, it should be right at number 3. So let's just go like this, and there we go, looks perfect. Now if I just select the image and hide it, as you can see, this looks really well. So it looks nice. So if I were just to add a few more elements, this would look like a completed like a completed detail. Also, in these places where we have this wall, just because the filled region doesn't really have that many options here, I would just set this to number 3, just to make a bit of a wider line on the ends. But as you can see, that just makes those lines here wider. So I just like to keep those at number 1, and then for the edges, I like to kind of go with the detail lines and maybe with wide lines. Especially this being concrete, you want to use wide lines for this. So I would go just like this. And then here the same thing goes for the ground. I would use wide lines for the ground as well. Now for this edge, maybe you would use some sort of an white line. So what I like to do here, just to have that fading effect, I like to go and create a new detail line. So to create a new detail line that will basically stand in just as a mask for this edge over here, what I would like to do is just go here to your Manage tab, and here we have the additional settings option. So it opens up a drop menu, and here we have our line styles. So I like to just open up line styles, go to the wide lines. Let's see. Okay, so let's go with a new line. So let's call it a white line. Here we go. So I want to make it the same thickness as wide lines, just because I just wanted to cover up everything. And here I'm going to go with the white color and make sure it's solid. Hit apply. Okay, there we go. And if I go back to my annotation tab with detail lines, and here above wide lines I have white lines, and here I just go like this. And there we go. Now here it's kind of overlapping over this the break line, so again you would have to select it and then go bring to front. That's the reason why I choose to do this in the end. And then here you can either make it go straight through, or maybe just give it unjoin those elements, maybe make it like that. I think it looks better like this. So as you can see, it looks a lot cleaner here. And the same thing, let's just reset the image. So reset temporary hide isolate, and the same thing for this siding. I would just go with the detail line, and I would probably go with some thinner line, maybe with medium lines perhaps, and then just go like this. And you would just go over those elements, and then maybe you can just select one of these and then copy it. Just like that. Okay, let's move it down a bit. There we go, this should look right. So now you can go to copy, select multiple, and then just copy it all the way up to get that siding. So let's just go like this. There we go, and then you would just use one more of these. So I'm just using the create similar tool, and there we go. So now if I just select the image again and hide it, there we go. This looks pretty decent. Okay, a few more elements are missing, but there we go. That's the basic approach to that. But of course you need to add some text and labels. Now for labels you can use just the text tool. So you just go here with text, and here maybe we can look at this. So this is lumber 30 by 90. So what I can do is just go here with text, place it here, and let's call it lumber. There we go. And if I just go to modify, select this thing and add a leader here, and then I can just go like that perhaps. Okay, let's cancel out of this. There we go. Maybe we can add a line like this. Now hopefully if I can select this and go into edit type, I can change the kind of the arrow. So let's see. Okay, here we have the leader arrowhead, and let's use the filled 15 degree. I think this one looks a bit better. There we go. So it looks a bit nicer. So you can go just like that. Yeah, let's go like this, and there we go. So that's basically how you can add all of your text and things like that. So just any annotation, any labels, anything like that, anything that includes text, you can add it in form of this just the text tool. And with a few more lines and tweaks, if we just select the image now and hide it, there we go. We pretty much have the complete thing. We have the description, it's just text, and of course you can change the size of the text. So here we have a few options. So if that's something you do, oops, I did not want to do that, but if that's just something you want to do, you can pretty much select all text and then, I don't know, make it 3.5 millimeters or whatever you want to do. Maybe it's a bit easier to read it like this. It matches the dimensions of the whole detail. So there we go, that's how you create the details in drafting views. Now that's how you create the details when you're using basically some detail that you've found online, or it's just something that's reused a lot, so you can just basically reuse it for multiple projects. But let's say you have a specific detail where you really have to kind of fit it within the constraints of the project. Let's say it's a very specific detail, very specific building, very specific connection between, I don't know, a wall and a floor or something like that. What do you do in that case? Well, in that case you would use a callout detail. So let me switch to this project. So you might remember, if you've seen my series on a simple house from beginning to end, or from sketch to a complete project, where I just take this house and I just go from the beginning and I make this complicated building. But first, let's just close off this drafting view project. Yeah, let's save the changes. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to go here into a section, and I'm just going to do a section. I don't know, let's do a section on this side. I want to have the foundation, I want to have the connection with the ground, the window, and then the connection to our roof. So that's a nice section to have. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go here into section 1. Here we go. And now to create a callout detail, so that's basically a detail that includes all of the model elements. To do so, you just need to go here to view, and then we have callout. So you have just a rectangular callout or a sketch callout. Now sketch might be good if you have maybe a weird detail, but for something like this it's fairly simple, so I'm just going to go with a regular rectangular callout. So let's go, I don't know, I think this is fairly decent. There we go. Now you're going to notice that this callout doesn't really have any markings here. That's just because we haven't placed it on a sheet, but if this were on a sheet it would of course include that name. But anyways, here we have that callout. Now you may notice that we don't really have any of the detail elements, so when you create this callout out of a section, it doesn't really transfer those annotation elements like the batting line and all of that, and all of the dimensions. Now I usually find that annoying in some cases, but in this case it's actually quite good, just because when you add more detail, some things might change. Perhaps that insulation batting line will change or something like that. So in those cases I like the fact that it changed. Now here we can start playing around with some modifications. So for example, this topography, or this actually this is a building pad. This kind of looks weird, so I can hide that in this view, and now it looks a little bit better. But here, just once we went here into the detail view, you can see that this building pad kind of doesn't include the whole foundation, and usually it should, just because when you're digging into the ground you would dig up to this point at least. So here we went into the callout and we found out that we have a problem with the original design. So what I can do is I can go maybe into the 3D view, for example. Okay, so once we're here I can orbit just around, and let me try to find that building pad. Okay, this is topography. Okay, this should be it. I can go into boundary and then maybe go into top of foundation. Okay, we're not going to see the foundation down there, but if I go into 3D, let's see. Yeah, just on this side we want to include the foundation, so I would just go with the align tool. So just find align and then select this part of the foundation and then just align this, and when I hit finish, hopefully once I go down into my callout, so here it is, under sections we have our callout, and now as you can see this looks much better. So I really fixed that issue that we had over there. Okay, so with that done, we can now continue playing around. So as you can see here, it kind of reset to the original values, so there's none of those annotation elements, so we can start adding those. So for example, here we have a wall. Now this wall is probably some sort of a concrete masonry unit or something like that. Now I've represented it with this hatch. This is kind of a rectangular hatch, and it did look okay in the floor plan and in sections, just because the scale was a bit larger, so it didn't look like a bunch of these squares. It actually looked like just kind of CMU units. But for this being a detail, we need to make it, well, a lot more detailed. So for that, I'm going to go here to the Annotate tab, and I'm going to add a component that's going to basically fill up this wall. So for that, I'm just going to go here to Component, and then let me just load in the family, just because here we only have the break line. We have some standard bricks, but we don't have those CMU bricks, and I'm just going to, and here we have some section shape. Okay, I don't need that. So let's go here into load family, and let's go back, and here we have some let's see, we have some masonry units, and we have some concrete masonry units, and here we go, we have a CMU. Now this is in section over here, so that's why we need to find the section one. There's also a view on top, a view on the side, so depending on which call out are you working with, that's how you would choose this. So I'm going to choose the section one, so just select that, hit open, and here we go. Now this looks a bit off. That's just because the size is off. So for this one, I think it should be 200 by 200 by 200. And now if I just go ahead and place it here, there we go. Now as you can see, the lines are way too dark. That's just indicating that maybe our scale is a bit off. So I'm going to switch the scale to maybe 1 to 10. Okay, this looks decent. Maybe even 1 to 5 would look even better. Okay, I can make some adjustments later on, but there we go. Yeah, let's go with 1 to 10. I think that's maybe a better option. So there we go. So we have this concrete masonry unit, and it's sitting there perfectly. And as you can see here on the bottom, it has kind of like a little mortar or whatever you're using for connection. So it's got that little gap kind of built into the family. So if I just go here to copy and make sure that multiple is checked on, I can go ahead here and maybe select the midpoint, and then I can just copy it upward, and it would keep that kind of that gap, as you can see, between the CMU blocks. So I can go, let's see, where's that middle? There we go. Okay, here with the window, it should probably stop there. So I'm really happy with the way this turned out. And then here we have on the side, we have some sort of a finish material. We can leave that as is, or we can maybe make some changes. Now here around the window, as you can see, we've got just a basic window. Now this window is fairly detailed. If I go here to find, it's fairly detailed for a Revit window. Usually they're really simple, especially if you're using one of the windows that comes with Revit, like the ones that are over here, like the basic window, the M fixed. That's usually fairly basic, but I used a custom like aluminium window, which is a bit better. Okay, we can kind of change the position of it, which is nice. I usually like to align it so to align it with the kind of the gap between the insulation and the whole structural material. So that's a nice option to have. So let's set that there. So we have that window there, and then here we have those upper elements. So maybe we can copy one of these. So let's go to copy. Let's copy it here. Maybe one there. Okay, it's not really going to fit there, but we can kind of adjust it maybe later on. Actually, let's get rid of this for now, and then I'm going to make some changes later on. So, for example, in this case, where we have this window that's located over here, I can see that here we have some sort of a distance, and usually what I want to have in this case is some sort of a something that covers up this basically the opening where we have this structural material, in this case this CMU block, and here we would have insulation. Now you do have to cover that in some way, so for that I like to leave some room. So I think this is too much room, so if I just take a measurement over here, if I just take this just the measure tool, and as you can see there is 7 centimeters. Now this really explains how Revit is meant to work. So you can basically create a callout, and then here you can see if there are some potential problems with your design when you get to construction details. So in this case, this I would like to have it like kind of fit I guess 5 of these CMU blocks, and then here just to have a small gap for that kind of gap between the wall and the window. So I'm just going to drop down the window for maybe like if it was 8, so let's drop it down to like 75 centimeters, or that might be too small. Yeah, let's go 76. So I'm going to go with 76 centimeters here, and then it leaves me with 3 centimeters for this. And for that, I can just do something like, for example, a wood block or something like that, or some sort of lumber that goes all the way around. So we can do that the same way we did it for that previous part of the course where I showed you how to use drafting views. So I'm going to insert just a component. So let's go to load family, let's go back here and let's use wood, and let's try, I think we use the wood framing and the lumber section. There we go. So just open this up. So let's go with doesn't really matter, we're going to change it to something else later on anyways. So let's go here to component, place this like that. There we go. So just the length needs to be changed, and I actually wanted to cover the whole thing, so let's measure it. Or actually I can just select the wall, and then here it's going to give me automatically the thickness of the wall. Should be somewhere over here. Or no, I need to go into edit type. There we go. The width is 37 centimeters, so I know that. So now I can just open this up. So just go into edit type. This should be 3 centimeters, and this should be 37. And let's just rename it to match that. So this is 30 by 370 millimeters. Okay, apply. Okay, there we go. So now it looks correct, and we can just move it here in place. Well, actually, it should be aligned to this. There we go. So now we have that element that's basically shielding off the top of this these CMU blocks, as well as the insulation. Now, for example, on the bottom here on insulation, usually you're not going to have it just like in the air like that. Maybe we can add another element over here. So for that, what we can do is just go ahead and use another one of these wooden like blocks. So let's just copy that here, and then oops, it's a bit off, so let's go to move again. Make sure you grab the little corner. There we go. And I think this is 15 centimeters, so let me just double check that. There we go, it's 15. So let's select this, edit type, duplicate, and then rename this to 150. Get rid of that little number 2, and just 15 here, 15 centimeters, hit OK. There we go, it kind of went to the other side, doesn't matter. And there we go, so we have that little block here kind of for the start and the end of this insulation line. Now for the insulation line, same as we did before, just go straight insulation. Width is going to be 15, so just go like that. And there we go, that's not that complicated, so we've got that insulation line over there. Now, looking at this section, it might be too large. Now, when you print this out in 1:10, it's really tall. If you place it on a sheet, it would be really tall, so let me just illustrate that. I'm going to go here to Sheets, right-click, go with New Sheet, and I'm going to go with A0 metric, being the biggest sheet. So let me just show that, and if I just drag this over, as you can see, it kind of covers the whole length of the and this is a huge piece of paper. So if I just measure this, this is like 84 centimeters tall by 120 centimeters. So it's really a large piece of paper. So usually you don't really need that. looking at this section, there's a large distance over here when we look at this window. Let's go back to the callout. Yeah, when we look at this window, you don't really have to have the whole length. The interesting part is this thing over here, and also this section over here, whatever you have there. And of course, this whole thing is what's really interesting and what's important, but the whole window in between isn't really that important. Also, this here isn't really that important, but there's not really that large of a distance, so we can let that stay as is. But for this window part, we can actually kind of compress our section a little bit by kind of losing the gap of the window. So if that doesn't make sense, don't worry, it's going to make a lot of sense in a second. So I can just select this whole kind of the outline, and if you don't see the outline, just make sure you go here and make sure that in your view properties under extents, the crop region visible is turned on, as well as the crop view. So now I can select the view, and here we have these little kind of horizontal view break. So this basically means it's going to break up our callout into two sections, and that's actually what we want to have. So just go to one of these, doesn't really matter which one, just one of these on the vertical sides. If you go to this one, it's kind of going to split it in half, and that's not what we want to have. So just one of these, any which one of these four, just click, and there we go. So now it's split it in half. So I want to have this part. This is what I find important, and also this part here. And then this whole gap, now we can get rid of it finally. So what we can do is just select this thing, and then you get this little drag arrows, as you can see here, and you just grab it, and then you can kind of make it closer. And as you can see, we've really kind of changed the size of this thing. It's a lot smaller now, and if we maybe resize it a little bit, there you go, it's much smaller now. So now if we go here on our sheet, okay, it's this one. As you can see, it's taking up a lot less space on this sheet. Just because we lost that window, we have all this space over here, and perhaps we can use a smaller sheet, not something this large. Okay, so let's go back to our callout. Now for these edges, of course, you will use the same thing that we used in the previous one, and that's the kind of break line component. So let's find it here. Okay, here we go, break line, and then let's place it kind of like this in the middle of the wall. Okay, again, it's in the wrong direction, so let's rotate by 180 degrees. There we go, move it a bit down, stretch it a little bit. There we go, looks perfect. Yeah, we can leave it just like that, and I can select it, go create similar, and just place it here. There we go, looks perfect. Maybe just adjust it a little bit. Okay, I'm happy with this. Now, if you don't like these lines, I know they can get a bit annoying, the crop view. So what you can do is go here to crop view or the extents, and then find crop region visible, and just uncheck that. And as you can see, it looks a lot better. Actually, now that I look at it, I can just turn that on, and we can get this even closer together. I think it would look a bit better. So let's just bring this in as close as we can get it. There we go. And now when we turn this off, there we go. So it says basically that we have this window over here, and the height levels are the same, but we're taking up a lot less space. Again, if we double check here on the sheet, as you can see now, it's taking even less space, almost half the room that it did previously. So as you can see, we've saved a lot of space on paper, so that's really nice. Let's go back to the callout, and of course you can use this same thing pretty much anywhere where your kind of view is fading out. So for example here, you can just place it, extend it a little bit, and there we go, it looks a lot better. So same thing here. Yeah, we can just adjust it just a little bit. There we go, looks much better. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. Maybe we can move it a bit up. I like it to be kind of centered, or at least look that way. So I really like the way this turned out. Okay, so we have that. Now let's see how we're going to fix this portion over here. So we have this block, and I'm actually just going to move it up. So just up like this. Okay, and we have some sort of a distance over here. Let's just measure that. And it's around 14 centimeters. Now, usually, at least in my country, under code, and I'm guessing it's similar in other countries, and in other codes is to have some sort of a reinforcement on the wall above your windows, and usually you would use a reinforced concrete for that. So I'm going to do that. Now in this case I don't really have to model that. As you can see here, we have this beam modeled. I don't really have to model this kind of the beam above the window, the reinforcement, so I'm just going to do that as detail, as filled region. So I'm just going to go with the diagonal crosshatch and just place it over here. Okay, just like that. Now once you go into sketch mode, it can be a bit weird when it goes in kind of grayscale. As you can see, the whole thing looks kind of weird, but once you hit finish, it will go back. Okay, so the hatch is, okay, it's the vertical one. I wanted the cross hatch. There we go. But as you can see, it's very different than this one. So what we need to do to make it similar is to go into edit type, and here it is going to be the diagonal cross hatch, but just the smaller one. So just check that. Here for the foreground color, keep it black, but for the background color, keep it gray. Hit apply. Okay. Okay, it should be darker gray, I think. So let's try that again. So edit type. So it's a bit of trial and error, just because it's different hatch patterns. Okay, that did not change. Let's try one more time. Okay, yeah, I did not check this. Okay, there we go. So it's a solid fill for the background color. Hit apply. Okay, and there we go. Okay, that's almost right. I think it should be a bit lighter. So let me just make it a tad lighter. Now I'm not going to really make this look perfectly same. Okay, it's pretty much similar. Okay, there we go. So now we have that kind of reinforcement above the window, and then we have the whole beam over here. So this looks pretty decent. Now what else I want to do is I want to play around with the window. So the window in this case looks just like that, as I said. Now the window can look a bit better if you're using maybe better window families, but if you're using maybe the basic families like the M fixed window, there are some additional options that you can do in order to make this thing look a lot better here in the detail. And for that we need to go here into detail component. So let's check that. Let's go into load family and let's see what Revit has on offer. So I'm going to go a few folders back, go to detail items, and then here we have doors and windows. Now if I open that up here, I can go to windows, and let's go, this is an aluminum window, so let's go with that. And here we have, as you can see, we have a lot of these sections. So if I select the first one, as you can see, I have a lot of these cool window sections, and you can actually use these for your windows. So this is for a sliding, this for the fixed window, so you can choose any one of these. I don't know, let's see which one would work good. Okay, let's go with the sill. Open that up, and yeah, so this is basically something that you would use, and then you can place it like that over here, and there we go. We have our kind of a window detail, and it's really perfect with all of these details. Let's see. Yeah, it's the only one we have. Now you can go into edit family and maybe extend it a little bit on this side if you want to, maybe like that. So it's kind of taking up a bit more space. Let's load it in the project and close. I'm not going to save the changes to the original family, but there we go. So you can play around with these windows. Now in this case I'm fairly happy with the window that I do have, but I'm just showing you that you do have this option. So if you want to play around with this, you can. Of course you get this little kind of flip grip that you can flip it to the other side, maybe if this is the correct positioning, and then you can just place it like that. And then for the original window you can just maybe go ahead and hide that element or something like that, and then you're just left with this. Now let's continue working on the other elements. So here, for example, for this floor, here we have a hardwood floor. Now if I just select the whole floor family, I can go here into edit type and go into structure, and here we have, as you can see, oak floor. So it's just a basic oak floor. Now usually in your projects your floor isn't going to be represented like this, especially in details. You're going to have some different wooden segments. Now luckily Revit components are to the rescue in this case as well, so I can go here to the annotate tab and go to component, And let's load in a new family. So I'm just going to drop back a folder from these windows, and then let's see what do we have for floors. So let's see. I think that should be either under finishes, and then we have flooring, and then we have wood flooring, and here, as you can see, we have a wood strip floor section, and I can just open that up, and as you can see, this one is 19 millimeter, but let's see, do we have a thicker one, or maybe we can modify that? Yeah, as you can see here, we can duplicate this one, and let's do a 30 millimeter by 57, that's okay, and then I'm just going to put the thickness at 3 centimeters, hit apply, and as you can see, I can place that element over here. Actually, it might make sense to make it a bit longer in this direction, or wider, I guess. So I'm going to go into edit type, let's duplicate and rename, let's do like 120 millimeters, hit OK, and here let's go with 12 centimeters, hit apply. Okay, there we go. Okay, this looks a bit better, so I'm going to be using that. So let's just place this one here, and then you can go with copy and make sure multiple is selected, go here straight to the edge, and then you can basically copy it multiple times, and that's how you get that wood floor pattern and make it look proper. Now here, of course, at the edge you would select this thing and this break line, and then you would just go here to bring to front so it masks that final one. But there you go, now you have a realistic depiction of what your wood flooring would look like. Also, one more thing that I would like to set up here, of course, you can go infinitely further into this and just add more and more detail. You would just go there into component and just find the elements, or if you can't find the elements, then just use the detail lines in order to kind of model them. But let's figure out what to do here on top. So as you can see here, we have a wooden basically roof over here, wooden construction. Now, if you haven't seen this tutorial or this course, I suggest you go over that to see how I created that wooden construction, but we just need to represent it here in the section. Now here, usually you would have some sort of a wood beam running lengthwise through this wall that's going to be supporting all of the beams that are on top for the roof. So for that, what we need to do is go again to component, let's load in a family. I'm just going to go back a couple of folders, go here into wood, let's go with rough carpentry, let's go with wood framing, and then here I'm going to go with heavy timber section, open that up. Now here let's search for what we have, and I'm actually going to load in, let's see, let's try this one might work. Okay, this is way too large. So let's go into edit type, let's actually measure this. So the height should be till about here, so that's like, I don't know, let's go with 16 centimeters by the width of around 10 centimeters. So I think that would work. So let's go to component. Yeah, let's go into edit type. This is way too large. I kind of overshot. So let's just go here. It should be 100 by 160. There we go. And then here for width, that's just 10 by 16 for depth, hit OK, and there we go. Now this looks infinitely better, and now you can place it here. You can center it just by going to move, and then just move it to the center of that of this line over here. And of course we need to anchor it in place. Now the same thing that we used for that previous anchor, just I want a straight anchor in this one, so I'm just going to go to component, load family, let's go back a few folders into metals, metal fastenings, let's see, anchor. It should be somewhere over here. Anchor. Okay, here we go. Open that up and let's place it here. Now, of course, we need to adjust that because it certainly won't look like this. So let's extend it first, and let's go with something smaller, like, I don't know, let's go with 12. Okay, that looks perfect. So just bring this down a bit. There we go, and it looks perfect. Now, this should be behind the whole beam. So I'm just going to select this timber section and go and bring it to the front, and there we go. It should look like that, and it actually looks like that. Now, of course, you can use the text commands just to add a bit more detail to this thing, and Yeah, there you go. That's how you finish this. And of course, you will have to add the insulation line first of all here, and then as well on this side, perhaps like this, just maybe a tad bit thicker. So maybe just select it and make it a bit better. Yeah, like 18. I think this looks a lot better now. Maybe even 20. And then it's just a question of aligning it properly. There we go. So this looks perfect now. Okay, there we go. So that's how you do details from callouts, or how to use callouts to complete your details. Maybe extend this a little bit. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this quick course on details in Revit. I hope this was useful, and of course I will be back with another Advanced Balkan Architect course next week. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.